I want to introduce a new tool to you. Now, some of you have actually already found it, but it's rather handy. So we're going to go over it really quickly, and then I want to show you, well, we'll separate that and do a separate video. If you go over to the tool palette and you go over here and you see the little water droplet tool. Now, water droplet tool is a blur tool, and it works pretty well. We're not going to worry about that for now, although I could show it to you later. The tool that I want to show you is the Smudge Tool. And it's a way of kind of adding a rather painterly effect to your images. You'll notice that as soon as I go, I just created a bunch of shapes here. As soon as I do this, you'll notice it's got the no symbol there. All right? And if I try and smudge this circle here, it's going to say the shape must be rasterized. So that's the first thing about the Smudge Tool, is it only works on rasterized layers, not shape layers, which is pretty common sense when you see what it does. It's working pixel by pixel. And so you have to have a pixel-based layer in order for this tool to actually work. So I'm going to click OK, that I do want it to rasterize the shape. And then you'll notice that now the shape is no longer a shape layer, it's a pixel-based layer. And the Smudge Tool has brush sizes, just like most of the other tools. You can change the brush size. And it also has the edge control, the hardness control as well, just like others. And it also has a strength control. And the strength control controls how much it's going to actually smudge these colors together. Now, I've only got one object on this layer. So at this point in time, it's actually not going to smudge all that any colors together, because it's on a separate layer. But if I had multiple colors on a single layer here, it would start to blend them too as it started to work on this. So I'll just zoom in here a little bit. So as I start to smudge, it's kind of like pulling. As I start to, it's like finger painting really. As I start to grab the edge of the shape with the tool, it starts to draw it out. And I can just keep clicking and it keeps pulling it more. As I increase that strength, it will pull more of the paint, or the pixels, if you will. If the strength is less, okay, it pulls a less amount. I usually like it right around 50 or 60%, because I find that when it goes up to 100, you can see it kind of blobs. Okay? Whereas around 60% or so, 50, 60%, it kind of stretches itself out nicely to a point. It requires a few more clicks maybe to get it out there, but I'd rather do that just because I like the ability to kind of fine-tune what I'm doing and just keep pulling it. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is it's also very easy to go too far with this, and then all of a sudden Photoshop is going to be struggling to keep up. Even on these computers, which are really fast, it's very easy for you to start doing a bunch of clicks and just go like crazy, and then have Photoshop kind of freak out a little bit. So be careful and go slowly, because it's really easy to go too many clicks and start messing some things up. But you can see how I can start creating, a slightly different shape than I would have been able to create with say just a shape tool or something like that. And because the edges are blurry, it kind of allows you to have some, I guess, artistic interpretation. Allows you to kind of feel your way through the shape a little bit more. Whereas when you're creating a shape with a shape tool, you kind of have to really be very precise and know exactly what you want. And I don't know, it's just a little bit harder. Now, the other thing that you can do is, as I was pulling colors out, I can also push back in. So if, zoom in a little bit more here. If I don't like the way this is here, I can maybe go a slightly smaller brush, and I can kind of pull that back in a little bit in short little bits. See that? So I can kind of do some custom, make sure I work on the edges here a little bit just to kind of get that exactly the way I want it. So it really does have a lot of uses. It's really kind of cool. You can do a lot with it, and it's a neat tool. Now, just to show you the other ones here, So if I go back over to the toolbox and I go to, say, the blur tool, it also has a strength indicator. 50% is usually pretty, it doesn't show up as well. It's kind of weak. Excuse me. So if I go up to the front edge here, and again, this will only work on pixel-based layers. Okay, it only works on pixel-based layers, so that if you have a shape layer, you'll have to rasterize it. But you can see how this has got a nice sharp line to it, nice sharp edge. If I use the blur tool on it, you can see how it starts to get really kind of blurry. Can you see that difference there? Okay, so we have this nice sharp edge, and then all of a sudden it gets really blurry. And you can just keep clicking and keep going over it. Now, one of the things that I will caution you about both of these tools is that they usually require a lot of clicks. You're clicking multiple times really rapidly to use the tool. The danger in that is you're going to run out of undos. In Photoshop, you have, I think the default is 14 undos that you can set up. So one of the things that I recommend is before you start working with the smudge tool, save your file. In fact, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go save as, and I'll just say it design, and then I'll do an underscore and I'll just go V1, like that, before I actually start using the smudge tool. And why that's so important is because then I'll start using the smudge tool. And let's say I start using it and 10 minutes later I realize I did a horrible job. Well, I guarantee I've gone way beyond all those undos. So what I'll do is I can just revert to the previously saved version before I started doing all that. So I'll just go to File, Revert, which is grayed out right now because I just saved it, but if I start doing some work, you'd see it come back, okay? That, I think, is very wise. The other thing I'll do is if I do a major step, so I do a bunch of smudging or blurring or something like that, and I think I like it, but maybe it's not the greatest, I'll save it again as version 2, V2. And maybe I'll even add a little note at the end of the file, blurred or smudged or something like that, so I know what that file is. And then I will come back tomorrow, and if I don't like it, then I can always go back to version 1. So let's just say, so if I just do a couple more smudges, okay. And then I'm going to go save it. Instead of just hitting save, I'll go to save as again, and I'll just say version 2, smudged. See? Just like that. It gives me a little note. I know exactly what that is. I save it, and there I go. You know, I mean, at very worst, if I really hate this shape now, I just trash it and make a new circle. I mean, it's really not that big of a deal, you know, but I always like to be careful with it. But make sure that if you're going to save multiple files, you keep them the exact same name so that they're all together, and then you just change the version, V2, V3, V4, that sort of thing. Don't start changing the name. Like, I don't know if I like this one, .psd. Maybe I like this one, .psd. This one's a piece of crap, .psd. If you start doing all that, what happens is now your images, all your versions, they're all spread out all over the place because they're not in alphabetical order anymore. You see what I mean? So it's boring, I know, but just use design 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, that sort of thing. V works great for versions, so you don't have to type out version every time. So that's a cool tool, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay?